Chris Benoit was said to have murdered his wife and son on June 25, 2007, in Benoit's Georgia home.
He carried his son on a pedestal. He loved that boy. You can watch any pay-per-view event. Anytime he went a match, he had his son in the ring with him. And I just cannot fathom the idea that he done anything to this family.
He was the politest person I've ever met. I mean, it was always yes ma'am, no ma'am. I mean, he wasn't rude to anybody. He was always talking about his kids and when they were coming to visit and what they were going to do.
Did it ever seem like he had a temper?
No, never.
Chris was beloved among his fellow superstars and was as well among WWE fans. This is an unbearable loss. And in fact, it was a WWE official that called police after Benoit missed two events that he was supposed to be at over the weekend in Texas. And last night, the WWE aired a 3-hour tribute to Benoit instead of the usual Monday Night Raw.
These and many other unanswered questions paint a different narrative than the official story from the media. Wrestling has been around for centuries. The history of wrestling dates back to the ancient Greeks. Wrestling has evolved into what it is today, sports entertainment.
That opportunity to come charging in, and this time it's Cowboy Davis once again on the aggressive, going to work on Terry McGinnis's arm.
He was one of the most popular performers of his generation. To those who knew him privately, Chris Benoit also appeared to be a devoted family man.
He was a very kind, what you saw in the ring was not the Chris Benoit on the outside. He loved to be at home playing with his children. That's where he wanted to be.
So when Chris's father, Michael, first learned of his son's death, the gruesome details made no sense.
He phoned me on Father's Day, which was a week before. And I said, you know, how are you going? What are you doing? And he said, unfortunately, Dad, I'm on the road. It's Father's Day today. I wish I was home with my family.
The details of this case is where the official story unravels and mystery thickens.
The details in the case span over 3 days leading up to the murders. On the Friday before the murders, fellow wrestler Chavo called Chris. Around 45 minutes into the phone call, Chris told Chavo that there was someone at his front door. Chavo said he heard Chris answer the door. A scuffle had taken place and the phone line went dead. Chavo called back several times until Chris answered the phone. Chavo said Chris was acting out of character, like he was under the influence. At one point during the conversation, Chris told Chavo he loved him, something Chavo reportedly said was forced and out of character for Chris.
During the 3-day span, Chris called the WWE and reported that his son and wife were in the hospital for food poisoning. WWE officials reported that Chris sounded like he was under the influence, describing his condition as groggy. Before he hung up, he gave another forced, quote, "I love you," unquote. Another mystery, to add to the equation, is Chris Benoit's cell phone. It has never been found. The police shut off Benoit's service immediately after the brutal discovery.
The officers discovered the bodies of Chris, his wife Nancy, and their 7-year-old son Daniel at around 2:30 p.m. Police would change their story about Daniel's death 3 times. His wife was bound before the killing. Police would change their story 3 times on where Nancy's body was located. Another strange mystery in this case is that Wikipedia updated their site on Chris, which included a statement that Chris was mourning the death of his wife Nancy. This was during the 3-day span.
These and many other unanswered questions paint a different narrative than the official story from the media.
He phoned me on Father's Day, which was a week before. And I said, you know, how are you going? What are you doing? And he said, unfortunately, Dad, I'm on the road. It's Father's Day today. I wish I was home with my family. So, a week later, we end up with this tragedy.
Behind those closed doors this June, Chris Benoit did the unthinkable.
The wife was bound on her feet and I think also on her wrists.
Over 3 days, he strangled his wife, suffocated his 7-year-old son, then killed himself.
Are you shocked to this day of specifically what happened?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We would have never dreamt that Chris was capable of doing this.
Plagued by grief and unanswered questions, Michael Benoit received a surprising phone call.
It was 4 days after the tragedy that Chris Nowinski of the Sports Legacy Institute contacted me.
I told him I think there was something worth investigating. That I thought brain injuries may have played a role in what happened, and it was worth doing the studies.
What did you think about it then?
I was grasping for anything. The world was very black. I mean, we didn't even know how to deal with this.
A former professional wrestler, Chris Nowinski, has dedicated himself to studying the long-term effects of concussions after struggling with the effects of his own multiple concussions.
I didn't know that I needed to rest my concussion when I got it. So for 3 weeks, I kept wrestling night after night with bad headaches and a fog every night, and made that one a lot worse. That I really wanted to look into this case was because Chris had told me that, you know, we talked about our concussion histories, that he had more than he could count.
So far, his Sports Legacy Institute has studied the brains of 4 former NFL players who committed suicide. They say they found brains so damaged from multiple concussions, they resembled those of Alzheimer's patients. They believe the brain damage and the resulting dementia may be an important factor in the suicides and possibly even homicide.
The problem here, and sort of the lesson here, is that I don't think any of us prior to very recently have realized that concussions can affect your brain in such a drastic way at such a young age.
With this new information, Benoit's family agreed to allow scientists to study Chris's brain.
When we did an examination on his brain, what we found was very similar to what we found in 4 previous NFL players.
That's a different type.
Dr. Julian Bales examined Chris Benoit's brain using a protein stain that highlights areas of trauma. It is evidence, Bales says, of a condition called CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
As far as you know, it was the concussion to the brain that created this damage?
It was multiple traumatic injuries, yes.
After the toxicology report found steroids in Benoit's system, speculation began that roid rage might have been behind what happened that fateful weekend.
There's no consensus in the medical community that this issue of roid rage, uncontrolled violence, precipitated by seemingly normal life stressors, there's no consensus that even exist. The changes that we see in his brain tissue are not caused by steroids. Some people would even say that steroids are good for the brain, that they support the brain. They don't destroy it.
Everyone is pointing to steroids and drug abuse. It's my feeling now that it's much more than that it's brain injury that has been causing these problems in the wrestling community.
Brain injury and steroids, but could that lead to murder?
There are actually a lot of people who say, look, and he killed somebody, killed his child, his wife, and then committed suicide. Is that what happens to people when they have brain problems, injuries?
I think we don't have the answer.
He was a kind and gentle man. We got to remember that this story isn't only about my son. We lost our daughter-in-law. We lost our grandson. Parents shouldn't have to bury their children.
The medical examiner reported that no alcohol was present in Chris's system, despite there being empty beer cans and wine bottles where Chris's body was found.
The medical examiner also made a darker discovery. Benoit died on Saturday. Someone had access to Benoit's cell phone on Sunday, and text messages were composed and sent on that Sunday. Cheville reported that Chris had been texting him that Sunday, the day after Chris was dead. The text was the address of the Benoit family home. This left Cheville with questions, as he had already spent time with Chris a week prior. Another text was about how to access his home.
Some speculate that Kevin Sullivan, Nancy Benoit's ex-husband, was responsible for the deaths. The months in which the murders happened just happened to coincide with the 10-year anniversary of their divorce.
What happened to the Benoit family over those 3 days?
We want answers and will follow this unsolved mystery.